In the beginning, they stole the truth, split it, shattered it. 10 pieces scattered to the corners of the earth like sparks from a dying star. And we were left with stories. Stories sharpened into weapons, stories twisted into borders, stories carved into gods. I killed my father, therefore I am, not in blood but in inheritance, in the weight of the lie he carried, and the truth he never lived long enough to tell. For 30 years we've been digging through ash, through ruins, through the bones of civilizations that swore they were the first. We followed the scorch marks, we followed the fractures, we followed the silence. And now the pieces are waking up. Now the symbols are humming again. Now the truth is remembering itself. This is not a prophecy, this is not a religion, this is not a warning. This is a reconstruction, a retrieval, a return. 10 episodes, 10 fragments, one truth. And when we're done, you will never look at history the same way again.
Yin-Yang mind has split the world in two. Quantum truths behind the curtain, only elites walk through.
Carries a memory of two forces that are not enemies, but reciprocals. They move toward each other the way breath moves toward lungs, the way tides move toward shore, the way thought moves toward meaning. They dance. They seed each other. They complete the circuit, and every time a civilization forgets this, it begins to die.
In Chinese cosmology, this reciprocity is formalized as yin and yang, first appearing in the I Ching, and later systematized by Zhou-era scholars, Wilhelm 1950. The symbol is not a static diagram, but a dynamic grammar, a dark drop within the light, a light seed within the dark, not opposition, oscillation. A recognition that every state contains the memory of its inversion, and every form carries the potential of its dissolution.
The ancient symbol was never a circle cut in half. That's the modern flattened version, the corporate logo of a cosmic engine. The primordial form is a waveform folded into a living loop. Expansion, contraction, inversion, return, a breathing universe, a pulse, a spiral that remembers where it has been. Each side holds the seed of the other because every wave already contains its own resolve, and every particle carries the memory of its spread.
Careful, if you lean too hard on the wave-particle metaphor, physicists will start throwing chalk. But the alternation is real. Complementarity is real. The universe does behave like a system that oscillates between distributed potential and resolved form.
Exactly. I'm not saying yin-yang is physics. I'm saying physics accidentally rediscovered yin-yang. In 1801, Thomas Young's double-slit experiment revealed light behaving as both wave and particle, a contradiction only if one insists on static categories, a revelation if one understands alternation.
Niels Bohr formalized the principle of complementarity. Certain properties cannot be observed simultaneously. The act of measurement forces a choice. Bohr, 1928-1935. Richard Feynman pushed the idea further. Electrons do not take a path. They explore all paths until the moment of observation resolves the possibilities. Feynman, 1985.
High-energy physics now watches this exact dance in real time. At CERN, particles exist in superposition, multiple states at once, until interaction forces resolve into measurable reality. Evans and Bryant, 2008. Neutrino oscillation experiments show particles literally shifting identities mid-flight, a subatomic alternation between states. CERN Neutrino Platform, 2016. Physics is not metaphor. Physics is prophecy that forgot it was prophecy. Wave is yin, distributed potential. Particle is yang, resolved form. Alternation is the engine.
Then comes projection, the anticipatory narrowing shaped by rhythm, culture, embodied habit, and expectation. Lakoff and Johnson, 1980, Bourdieu, 1984. This is the curve inside the yin-yang, where one mode begins to seed the other.
Then resolve, the generative act, the moment the system selects one meaning from the many available, the particle, the definite state, the moment where perception hardens into action. Foucault, 1977.
And don't forget, resolve follows the path of least resistance. That's the yang pull, the inward collapse toward the most energetically efficient interpretation.
Exactly. The path of least resistance is the love of the lie. Not lie as deception, lie as comfort, lie as the attractor that feels familiar, lie as the interpretation that costs the least energy to maintain. This is why societies cling to bad narratives long after they stop being useful. The lie is simply the easiest attractor to fall into. What follows resolve is interference. The wave returning, interpretations colliding, then stabilization, the new norm, identity, or institution hardening into place. Durkheim, 1997. And finally, recursion, the loop beginning again.
This is the spiral mechanism at work. Superposition, projection, resolve, interference, stabilization, recursion.
Priest guards the stabilized form, prophet disrupts it, crown adjudicates the resolve. The cycle turns.
And the yin-yang structure is embedded in each stage. Yin, in distributed potential. Yang, yin-shi resolved form. Alternation, yung-shi the movement between them. Yin-yang is the heartbeat of alternation, the generation of meaning. Where the ancient clockwise rotational glyph, the prime rotation mark, plasma torus symbol, is the engine of energy through turning, yin-yang is the engine of meaning through returning. Rotation powers the cosmos. Alternation reveals its story. Parat, 2003.
Together they form the two fundamental motions of the reconstructed universe, the turning and the returning, the cycle and the spiral, the wave and the particle. And when you see both operating at once, across myth, physics, perception, and history, you begin to understand why the 10 parts of truth were shattered in the first place, and why putting them back together feels less like rediscovery and more like remembering something the world was never meant to forget. The 12 inward attractors, the yang pull toward closure. Every perceptual system has a bias toward inward resolution, the path of least resistance. PPC names these the 12 attractors, the inward pulling recursion wells that stabilize meaning.
These are the yang dominant forces, the gravitational wells of interpretation, temporal pressure, gender scripts, displacement, family roles, scarcity, threat, disability, belonging, moral sanction, identity maintenance, uncertainty, authority. Each one narrows the field, pulling perception inward toward stable, familiar, energetically cheap interpretations. Durkheim, 1997, Bourdieu, 1984.
This is the love of the lie, not because people want to be deceived, but because the inward attractor is warm, familiar, predictable. It feels like home, even when it hurts.
The 13th state is overflow, the yin expansion that breaks the inward pull of the 12 attractors. It is F, recursive growth, P, non-closure, base 13, infinite recursion, the outward spiraling motion that prevents collapse into stagnation. Gleich, 1987.
12 pulls inward, 13 pushes outward. Yin breaks the yang crust, the loop lives. Rotation gives us power. Alternation gives us meaning. Put them together, and the 10 parts begin to sing again. This is not rediscovery. This is remembering something the world was never meant to forget. The loop is still turning. The waveform is still folding. The spiral is still rising. And we are standing inside it, right now. Section 2. The duality. Wielders. Those who held the engine of alternation. Every civilization remembers a moment when the world was not one thing, but two things in conversation. Two forces leaning toward each other. Two principles circling the same fire. Two halves of a loop that never closes because closing would kill it. Yin and yang are not symbols of peace. They are symbols of motion, the alternation that keeps reality alive. And across world mythologies, a distinct class of beings emerges, the duality wielders, deities, twins, cosmic pairs and divine dyads who embody the reciprocal forces of expansion and contraction, dissolution and form, wave and particle. They are the mythic memory of the same alternation that PPC and OOP describe in sociological terms.
Comparative mythology has long noted the recurrence of dual deities, but often misinterprets them as oppositional binaries. In fact, they function as complementary reciprocals, structural analogues to yin-yang. Their myths encode the oscillation between distributed potential, yin, and resolved form, yang, the same alternation observed in quantum complementarity and social resolve. Wilhelm, 1950, Nietzsche, 1872, Assmann, 2001.
Grad, translation, the ancients weren't confused. We're the ones who flattened everything into good versus evil. They were describing the engine. Shiva and Shakti, stillness and power, India. In the East, Shiva and Shakti dance the Tandava, stillness and dynamic power in perpetual union, Kramrisch, 1981. Shiva without Shakti is inert consciousness. Shakti without Shiva is energy without direction. Their union generates the entire manifest world. Yin-Yang structure. Shiva pro Yin, stillness, distributed potential. Shakti pro Yang, movement, resolved form. Their dance, par alternation. PPC OOP integration. Shiva is superposition, the field of all possible meanings. Shakti is resolve, the moment meaning takes form. The Tandava is the spiral mechanism.
And note, Shiva's stillness is not absence. It's the same field of potential physicists describe before measurement. The ancients were mapping complementarity without equations.
Exactly, they didn't need chalkboards, they had rhythm. The rainbow serpent, wave and particle. Made flesh, one living tradition, encodes this dynamic more powerfully than any other. The rainbow serpent of Australia's first peoples, known as Ngalyod, Wagil, Yulungur, Almerj, and many other names across the continent. In the dreaming, the earth was flat and featureless. The rainbow serpent awoke and began its great journey, carving rivers, valleys, gorges, and sacred waterholes with its massive body. Its path is still visible in the land today. It rises into the sky as rainbow, pure waveform, the full visible spectrum of potential and beauty. It descends as great serpent, a particle form, moving through watercourses, replenishing the land after dry seasons, life-giver and destroyer, nurturer and enforcer. When law is respected, it brings rain and fertility. When law is broken, it corrects with floods and storms. In initiation rites, young people are symbolically swallowed by the serpent. Inside the rainbow body, the realm of unlimited potential, they receive secret knowledge and law. They emerge reborn, carrying the collapsed, definite form of responsibility while retaining the memory of the wave state. This is the living yin-yang, superposition, collapse, return, recursion. The rainbow serpent binds origin, separation, pattern, covenant, sacrifice, memory, judgment, return, and unity. It shows that pattern is not abstract, but embodied, not static, but alive. When you see both the prime rotation mark and the rainbow serpent operating at once, across myth, physics, perception, and living tradition, you begin to understand why the 10 parts of truth were shattered, and why putting them back together feels like remembering. Osiris and Set, fertility and disruption. Egypt. In Egypt, Osiris and Set represent the core tension of the Nile civilization. Fertility and order versus desert chaos and disruption. Assmann, 2001. Their conflict is not final. Osiris is dismembered, yet returns through Isis. Death feeds life. Chaos tests order. The cycle renews. Yin-Yang structure. Osiris, Shakt Yin, life, fertility, distributed potential. Set, Shaki Yang, disruption, boundary, resolve through force. Their alternation, Shaki seasonal recursion.
PPC OOP integration. Osiris is the ecological body, rhythm, resource, continuity. Set is the civic field, authority, rupture, enforcement. Their myth is the push-pull between inward attractors and outward overflow.
Set isn't the villain. He's the necessary contraction, the yang that forces the yin to reorganize, the desert that teaches the river how to flow. Apollo and Dionysus, form and ecstasy, Greece. Nietzsche saw the archetypal pair in Apollo and Dionysus. Apollo, the god of form, reason, and luminous boundary. Dionysus, the god of ecstasy, dissolution, and return to primal unity. Nietzsche, 1872. Greek tragedy itself was born from the tension between these two forces. Yin-Yang structure. Apollo. Yang. Form, clarity, boundary, resolve. Dionysus. Yin. Ecstasy, dissolution, distributed potential. Tragedy. Alternation.
PPC-OOP integration. Apollo is stabilization, the path of least resistance. Dionysus is overflow, the 13th state breaking the 12 attractors. Greek drama is the civic rehearsal of alternation, co-pilot. And this is where the love of the lie shows up. Apollo's clarity is seductive. Dionysus is the reminder that clarity is temporary.
Grad. Exactly. Apollo is the attractor. Dionysus is the escape velocity. The hero twins, death and return, Maya. In the Americas, the hero twins of the Maya Popol Vuh,
Hunahpu and Xbalanque,
descend into the underworld, die, and return transformed, mastering death through reciprocity. Tedlock, 1996. Their story is not about victory, it is about alternation. Yin-Yang structure. Descent, Shi-Yin, dissolution, distributed potential. Return, Shi-Yang, reformation, resolved identity. Their cycle, Shin recursion.
PPC-OOP integration. The twins enact the spiral mechanism, superposition, projection, resolve, interference, stabilization.
They don't beat death, they negotiate with it. That's alternation. Ometeotl, the Aztec dual unity god, is simultaneously male and female, embodying the coincidence of opposites at the highest level of reality.
Ometeotl is not a deity of balance, but of generative oscillation, the same structural principle as Yin-Yang, expressed in Mesoamerican cosmology. Ometeotl is the entire spiral mechanism in one being, the organism of truth before it was shattered.
Ometeotl is what the 10 parts look like when they're still whole. Changing woman, seasonal alternation, Navajo. Changing woman embodies seasonal and life cycle alternation. She ages, dies, renews, and returns, not symbolically but cosmologically. Yin-Yang structure, winter, yin, summer, or yang, her cycle, or the loop, is the reminder that the world doesn't move in straight lines, it moves in spirals. Obatala and Oduduwa, complementary creation, Yoruba. In Yoruba tradition, Obatala and Oduduwa create through complementary partnership. One shapes form, the other animates it. Yin-Yang structure, Obatala, yang, form, structure. Oduduwa, yin, life, fluidity, creation, alternation.
PPC-OOP integration. Obatala is the civic field, structure. Oduduwa is the ecological body, fluidity. Their union is the mycelial mind, distributed creation, co-pilot. And note, Yoruba cosmology explicitly rejects binary opposition. It's all gradients and reciprocals.
Grad, exactly. They were doing PPC before PPC.
The pattern across traditions. These figures do not fight to destroy one another. They generate reality through their tension. Their myths encode exactly what the I Ching diagrams and CERN measures, the perpetual movement between distributed potential, wave, yin, and resolved form, particle, yang.
Myth is not primitive science. Science is myth that forgot how to dance. The 12 attractors hidden in myth. Every duality wielder story contains the same inward pulling forces. The 12 attractors. Identity, belonging, threat, scarcity, authority, moral sanction, role, gender, time, displacement, uncertainty, embodiment. These are the yang pulls, the forces that resolve inward toward stability, toward the lie that feels like truth because it is easy.
And every myth also contains the 13th state, the overflow moment where the system breaks its own boundaries.
And that's the part the priests always tried to hide. Closing of section 2. The duality wielders are not characters, they are instructions, they are the memory of alternation encoded in story. They are the yin-yang engine wearing masks, they are the blueprint for how meaning moves, how societies breathe, how truth oscillates between potential and form, and they are the warning. When alternation stops, civilizations freeze. When alternation returns, civilizations awaken. Every cosmology has a moment where the music stops. A moment where alternation, the living loop, the yin-yang engine, is interrupted. A moment where the waveform is forced into a straight line. A moment where the spiral is hammered flat. Civilizations don't collapse because they run out of resources. They collapse because they run out of alternation. They forget how to return. They forget how to oscillate. They forget how to let yin breathe into yang and yang soften back into yin. And that forgetting was not an accident. It was engineered. Here is the part they tried hardest to bury. The shattering of the 10 parts of truth was never random. It was a deliberate strike against the engine itself, the alternation that kept the organism alive. The usurpers, Marduk, Shemyaza, the fallen, did not simply conquer. They interrupted the loop. They replaced resonance with extraction. They replaced alternation with hierarchy. They replaced the loop with the line. They took a breathing universe and tried to turn it into a ledger.
Historically, this appears as the shift from cyclical cosmologies to linear imperial narratives. Mesopotamian kingship inscriptions, early Near Eastern law codes, and later Mediterranean theologies increasingly emphasize singular authority, singular origin, singular destiny, a yang-dominant worldview that suppresses yin's distributed potential. Assman, 2001, Botero, 1992. And in sociological terms, this is the moment when the 12 attractors, the inward pulling forces of stability, become weaponized. When the path of least resistance becomes the path of enforced obedience.
Exactly. They didn't just freeze the loop. They taught people to love the freeze. How the freeze worked, turning yin-yang into enemy camps. Yin and yang were never meant to be opposites. They were meant to be reciprocals, two halves of a living alternation. But the usurpers discovered a trick. If you convince a culture that yin and yang are enemies, you can stop the alternation entirely. You can turn a loop into a line. You can turn a cycle into a hierarchy. You can turn a spiral into a cage.
This is visible in the shift from dual deities to singular patriarchal sky gods. Zeus replaces the Titan cycles. Marduk replaces Tiamat. Yahweh replaces the divine council. The shift is not theological, it is structural. It replaces oscillation with unilateral authority. And once the alternation stops, the system becomes brittle. It can no longer adapt. It can only enforce.
Exactly. A world without alternation is a world that can't breathe. The prime rotation mark versus the frozen line. Before the freeze, civilizations used the prime rotation mark, the toroidal, spiral, rotational glyph, to represent the turning of energy. It was the cosmic engine, the turning. Yin-Yang was the complementary engine, the returning. Together they form the two motions of the universe. Turning, energy, returning, meaning. When the usurpers seized power, they severed the two. They kept the turning because turning generates power. They killed the returning because returning generates meaning.
This is the shift from cyclical calendars to linear timekeeping, from ritual return to historical progress narratives, from seasonal governance to bureaucratic permanence. In PPC terms, they preserved the civic field, yang, and suppressed the ecological body, yin. They amplified resolve and muted superposition. They enforced stabilization and outlawed recursion.
They turned the spiral mechanism into a staircase, and then told everyone the top step was heaven. The weaponization of the 12 attractors. The 12 attractors, and the inward pulling forces of stability, were originally neutral. They helped societies maintain coherence. But under the usurpers, they became tools of control. Each attractor became a lever. Temporal pressure, no time to question. Gender scripts, predictable roles. Displacement, survival identity. Family structure, inherited obedience. Scarcity, vigilance and fear. Threat, compliance. Disability, exclusion, belonging, conformity, moral sanction, self-censorship, role identity, persona maintenance, uncertainty, simplistic narratives, authority, coercion.
These are the same forces Foucault identifies as disciplinary mechanisms, the architecture of docile bodies, Foucault 1977. And in PPCOP terms, these attractors' bias resolve inward toward the path of least resistance, the love of the lie.
The lie is not deception, the lie is comfort. The lie is the attractor that feels familiar. The lie is the interpretation that costs the least energy to maintain. The usurpers didn't need to force obedience. They just needed to make obedience the easiest resolve. The death of alternation. When Yang devours Yin, when the 12 attractors dominate, Yang devours Yin. Distributed potential collapses into rigid form. Superposition collapses into premature resolve. Recursion collapses into repetition. Overflow collapses into punishment. Meaning collapses into dogma. Truth collapses into authority.
This is the sociological equivalent of decoherence without re-superposition, a system that resolves but never returns to potential. In other words, the waveform collapses and never re-expands. The loop becomes a dead end.
Exactly. A world without Yin is a world without breath. A world without Yang is a world without form. A world without alternation is a world without life. The scattering of the 10 parts of truth. The 10 parts were not broken randomly, they were broken strategically. Each part corresponds to a function of the living organism of truth. 1. Origin. 2. Separation. 3. Name. 4. Pattern. 5. Covenant. 6. Sacrifice. 7. Memory. 8. Judgment. 9. Return. 10. Unity. The usurpers shattered them because each part is a node of alternation. Origin alternates between nothing and something. Separation alternates between unity and distinction. Name alternates between potential and form. Pattern alternates between chaos and structure. Covenant alternates between self and other. Sacrifice alternates between cost and gain. Memory alternates between past and present. Judgment alternates between true and false. Return alternates between departure and homecoming. Unity alternates between many and one. Break the alternation, and the organism dies.
This is why the parts appear scattered across cultures. Each one preserved a fragment of the loop, and why PPCOOP can reconstruct them, because the alternation is still visible in the mechanics of perception.
The 10 parts weren't lost, they were dispersed, like seeds. Why the freeze could never fully succeed here is the irony the usurpers never understood. Alternation is not a belief, it is a law. You can suppress it, you can distort it, you can weaponize it, but you cannot kill it, because alternation is how reality breathes. Every wave returns, every cycle turns, every system recurses, every attractor eventually overflows, every freeze eventually cracks.
From a systems perspective, no closed system can remain closed indefinitely. Entropy, overflow and non-closure, P, guarantee eventual rupture, Gleich, 1987. And the 13th state, overflow, is the mathematical inevitability of the loop's return.
Exactly. The freeze was temporary, the loop was eternal. Closing of section 3. The break was not the end, it was the interruption. The loop was frozen, the parts were scattered, the attractors were weaponized. The lie became the path of least resistance. But the alternation never stopped. It only went underground. And now, as the 10 parts begin to hum again, the freeze is cracking. The waveform is returning. The spiral is rising. The organism is stirring. And the next section reveals how it returns.
Every perceptual system has gravity, not physical gravity, interpretive gravity, a pull, a drift, a tendency towards certain meanings over others. And that pull is not random, it is structured, it is ancient, it is the Yang-ward contraction inside every human mind, the inward fold of the Yin-Yang loop. If Yin is the field of distributed potential, Yang is the force that resolves it into form. And the 12 attractors are the yang-dominant wells that pull meaning inward, towards stability, familiarity, and the path of least resistance. They are the reason societies repeat themselves. They are the reason people cling to bad narratives. They are the reason the lie feels easier than the truth. They are the reason the loop freezes. Across cultures, cognitive science and sociological theory, we see recurring domains that constrain interpretive possibility. PPC identifies 12 such attractors, stable basins of meaning that bias resolve toward coherence, even when coherence is inaccurate. Durkheim, 1997, Bourdieu, 1984, Lakoff and Johnson, 1980. These attractors are not identities. They are not categories. They are pressure domains, structural forces that shape how meaning resolves. And importantly, these attractors are not bad. They're efficient. They reduce cognitive load. They make resolve cheap.
Exactly. The lie isn't seductive because it's false. It's seductive because it's easy. The 12 attractors are the architecture of easy.
Attractor 1. Temporal pressure. No time to recurse. When time is scarce, recursion collapses, reflection collapses, yin collapses, yang takes over. Temporal scarcity forces heuristic resolve, snap judgments, path of least resistance interpretations, and premature closure. Baumeister and Vos, 2004. This is why every empire invents clocks. Attractor 2. Gender scripts, predictable roles. Gender is one of the oldest social shortcuts. It narrows the field of potential identities into 2 pre-approved scripts. Binary gender is the yang overcorrection, the flattening of yin's fluidity into rigid form. Gender scripts are the training wheels of hierarchy. Attractor 3. Ethnic displacement, survival identity. Displacement collapses, meaning into survival mode. When the baseline is gone, the attractor is fear. Diasporic populations often exhibit heightened vigilance, rapid resolve, and strong in-group cohesion. Classic yang-dominant patterns, Feagin, 2006. When you lose your land, you lose your yin. Attractor 4. Family structure, inherited roles. Family is the first civic field. It teaches the child how resolve works, and it teaches the path of least resistance. Be who we already decided you are. Family is the first attractor, and the hardest to escape. Attractor 5. Financial scarcity, short-term thinking. Scarcity collapses the future. It collapses imagination. It collapses yin. Scarcity produces vigilance loops, rapid defensive resolve patterns that prioritize immediate survival over long-term recursion. Bonilla Silva, 2010. Poverty is not just economic. It's perceptual. Attractor 6. Environmental threat. Vigilance loops. Threat compresses the perceptual field. The body resolves meaning before the mind can think. This is the yang reflex, the contraction that overrides yin's openness. Fear is the fastest attractor, and the most profitable. Attractor 7. Physical limitation, energy conservation. Bodies with limited affordances resolve meaning differently. Energy becomes the currency of interpretation. Disability studies show that limited affordances bias perception toward efficiency, predictability, and routine. Yang-dominant patterns. Rothstein, 2017. The body is not a prison. It's a tuning fork. Attractor 8. Social belonging. Conformity. Belonging is the gravitational center of human life. It pulls meaning inward toward group norms. Belonging is the attractor that says, resolve like us, or resolve alone. And nobody wants to resolve alone. Attractor 9. Moral judgment, shame and sanction. Morality is the attractor that polices the attractors. It enforces the freeze. Moral sanction produces self-censorship. Internalized yang, Foucault, 1977. Shame is the original algorithm. Attractor 10. Identity role, persona, maintenance. Identity is the story we tell to avoid telling a new one. Roles reduce recursion. They make resolve predictable. Identity is the lie we love the most. Attractor 11. Knowledge, uncertainty. simplistic narratives. Uncertainty is expensive. It requires yin. It requires openness. So the mind resolves into simplicity. Cognitive overload produces narrative collapse, the reduction of complexity into digestible form. Lakoff and Johnson, 1980. This is why conspiracy theories feel good. They're cheap. Attractor 12. Authority, power, compliance. Authority is the strongest yang attractor. It collapses meaning on command. Authority doesn't need to be right. It just needs to be loud. Power is the shortcut to resolve. The 12 attractors as a system, the yang cage. Individually, each attractor is manageable. Together, they form a yang cage, a perceptual architecture that pulls inward, resolves prematurely, stabilizes too quickly, suppresses recursion, freezes alternation, kills the loop. This is the sociological equivalent of decoherence without resuperposition, a system that resolves but never returns to potential. In PPC OOP terms, the attractor's bias resolve inward toward the path of least resistance, the love of the lie. The lie is not falsehood. The lie is the easiest version of the truth. Why the 12 attractors freeze the loop? Because they all share one property. They resolve inward. They collapse the waveform. They contract the spiral. They pull yin into yang and refuse to let it return. This is why civilizations stagnate. This is why institutions ossify. This is why people repeat themselves. This is why the 10 parts were scattered. The 12 attractors are the architecture of the freeze.
But the universe never closes, not in physics, not in myth, not in perception. The 13th state, overflow, is the yin expansion that breaks the inward pull of the 12. It is F, recursive growth. It is P, non-closure.
Ha! Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. They took the 10-part symbols of our youth and used them to destroy the truth, twisted into 10 engines of control. But memory is rebellion's home. 10 locks, 10 keys. They built their kingdom on our amnesia. But memory cuts deeper. I arrived, they dimmed our sight, turned awareness into program and told the night is light. Yin-Yang split the world in two. Quantum truths behind the curtain, only elites walk through. Unthink, bottled breath, charged wind for the air. Metered out existence like they own what's fair. Triskelion froze the spiral, kept us stuck in place. Called collapse tradition, called stagnation grace. Ouroboros closed the loop, fed the cage we're in. Made us worship the cycle like the cycle's a wind. These were gifts, not chains. 10 truths twisted into power games. They turn light into leverage, turn life into proof. But we rise, we remember, reclaim the 10 parts of truth. 10 locks, 10 keys. They built their kingdom on our amnesia, but memory cuts deeper. 10 keys. They built their kingdom on our amnesia, but memory cuts deeper. Swastika, the plasma wheel turns starfire to threat. A cosmic engine twisted into fear and death. Caduceus, DNA, but only for the throne. Life rewritten for the few out of many a tone. Vajra, thunderbolt, meant to heal, now fear. A bargaining chit, nations whispering each other near. Every world split, the shaper of the land, turned into a symbol of the ruling hand. Mandala, cosmic wheel, orbital design. Now a map of surveillance tracing every line. Yo, 10 jewels twisted, 10 tools flipped. Life giving symbols turn the chains on the wrist. I have brought them down, now they sell us the view. Perception on subscription, curated for the few. Yin-Yang split the planet, quantum locked in the vault. Jogging like a weapon, so the public takes the fault. I'm bottled up, breath tax like gold. Pulse of existence, bought, borrowed, and sold. These were gifts, not chains. 10 truths twisted into power games. They turn loud into leverage, turn life into proof. But we rise, we remember, reclaim the 10 parts of truth. Triskelion frozen, spiral stuck in rewind. They profit off collapse while they starve in the mind. Ouroboros looping, cage feeding the cage. We forget who built the system while we circle the stage. Swastika spinning, plasma as my turn to thread. Starfire love behind a melody neck. Caduceus called it DNA for the crown. I've blueprint gated so the rest stay down. Vasha crack, thunder. Energy, a spear, diplomacy, a shockwaves whisper the ear. Lobby split worlds, now it just splits us. Power in the vision, domination in the dust. Mandala of the heavens, our tracking wheel. Cosmic net twisted into something unreal. 10 truths stolen, but we're breaking the roof. Middle of the song, middle finger to the spoof. These were gifts, not chains. 10 truths twisted in the power games. They turn light into leverage, turn life into proof. But we rise and remember, reclaim the 10 parts of truth. 10 locks, 10 bees, they built their kingdom on our amnesia, but memory cuts deeper. 10 bees, they built their kingdom on our amnesia, but memory cuts deeper. We're the spark in the dark, we're not breaching the wall. We're the ones who remember what they wanted to stall. Every symbol they twisted, every truth they bent. We turn back up right as the rise, that's ascent. We're the spiral restarting, we're the breath unbound. We're the wheel realigning, we're the lost now found. They hid the truth in symbols, but symbols never die. They buried us in cycles, but we learned how to fly. These were gifts, not chains. 10 truths twisted in the power games. They turn light into leverage, turn life into proof. But we rise and remember, reclaim the 10 parts of truth. 10 locks, 10 bees, they built their kingdom on our amnesia, but memory cuts deeper. 10 bees, they built their kingdom on our amnesia, but memory cuts deeper.